finally, what we all have been waiting for and calling for and questioning why it wasn't happening. Stephanie White has stepped up to the plate in defense of Caitlin Clark. I could not believe my ears, guys. I could not believe my ears when I heard this. Stephanie White actually being bold enough to stand on business and protect Caitlin Clark.
Stephanie White just flipped the entire WNBA conversation on its head. She said the one thing everyone else has been too afraid to admit publicly. No filters, no hesitation, just truth. She laid it all out, explaining how Caitlin Clark's name keeps getting dragged into every single CBA argument, even when Caitlin herself says absolutely nothing. White didn't soften her words or dance around the issue. She went straight for it. So, let's dive deeper into what she revealed and why it's igniting such strong reactions across the league. Do you believe Caitlin Clark is being unfairly used by the WNBA and its players right now? Because based on what Stephanie said, it's obvious she and Caitlin share a deep sense of respect and genuine connection, something that goes far beyond the game itself. Indiana Fever's head coach, Stephanie White, just dropped an interview that's shaking the entire WNBA to its core, and honestly, it's a complete game changer. She didn't hold back, calling out how people are constantly using and disrespecting Caitlin Clark's name and image. Her message was crystal clear. This can't keep happening. But here's where it gets even more powerful. She didn't shout, rage, or point fingers. Instead, she delivered her message with calm confidence and undeniable authority. Her exact words? I hate it all for Caitlin. She's a 23-year-old kid who loves to play this game, and she's a pawn in a lot of other people's games. That single line changed everything. Because let's be honest, she's absolutely right. Somehow, Caitlin Clark has become the center of every WNBA debate, from salary disputes and TV ratings to media favoritism and even officiating controversies. No matter the issue, her name is always pulled into the chaos, and that says a lot about where the league stands right now. When asked about Caitlin Clark constantly being dragged into league controversies, Stephanie White didn't hold back for a second. She said, I hate it all for Caitlin. She's a 23-year-old kid who just loves this game, and she's become a pawn in other people's agendas and narratives. And honestly, that one quote says everything. White explained that the WNBA is going through what she called the growing pains of becoming a mainstream professional sport, but at what cost? The craziest part is that Caitlin Clark herself has barely said anything controversial all season. She stayed focused, respectful, and professional. Yet somehow, she's dragged into every single feud like she's the face of every issue in the league. And Stephanie White? She's clearly done with it. When she says Caitlin's being used as a pawn, she's not just blaming one side. She's calling out the entire system, the players, the commissioner, and even the media that fuels the fire. It's a rare moment of honesty, and one that's shaking the WNBA conversation to its core. Every single faction in the WNBA seems to be using Caitlin Clark as a tool to fuel their own agendas, and honestly, it's getting out of hand. Let's call it what it is. Caitlin Clark has become the most influential name women's basketball has ever seen. She's the ratings booster, the guaranteed ticket seller, the headline driver, the complete package. And with that kind of star power, it's no surprise that everyone wants a piece of her spotlight. But at this point, it's gone way too far. Every time a player voices frustration with the league, Caitlin's name somehow gets pulled into it. Whenever a new policy is announced, the first question is always, how will this affect Caitlin Clark? It's like she's stopped being viewed as an actual person and instead turned into a walking, talking marketing strategy. And that's exactly what Stephanie White has had enough of. White made it clear, we're standing at a pivotal
turning point in the league's history. The way the WNBA handles Caitlin Clark now will define not only her legacy, but the future credibility of the entire league. Stephanie White reflected on how far the league has come, reminding everyone that she was part of the very first WNBA collective bargaining agreement, a time when players were simply fighting for basic year-round insurance. Now, decades later, the league has grown, and players rightfully expect more. Fair pay, proper leadership, and genuine understanding from those at the top. White emphasized that coaches like herself, Becky Hammon, and others who once played in the league truly understand what these players go through. And that brings her to Caitlin Clark. White has spent the entire season watching Caitlin take relentless physical hits on the court, constant criticism and personal jabs off it, and still somehow keep her composure with professionalism far beyond her years. But here's the uncomfortable truth. Number 23-year-old should have to carry the political and emotional weight of an entire league. When White calls Caitlin a pawn, she means it in every sense. The WNBA uses her name to sell tickets. Players use her success to push for stronger contracts. The media milks every story connected to her for clicks, and fans, they're left watching a league that seems more focused on the drama surrounding Caitlin Clark than the actual beauty of the basketball being played. Now here's where things take a fascinating turn. Stephanie White isn't just speaking as a coach trying to protect her star. She's speaking as a seasoned veteran who's been part of the WNBA since its most difficult early years. She lived through the era when players were literally fighting for the basics: health insurance, stable pay, and professional respect. So when she calmly calls today's chaos a growing pain, she's speaking from deep, hard-earned experience. Back then, players were simply grateful the league existed. Today, they're demanding what they've rightfully earned: better pay, real leadership, and genuine respect. But the problem? The people in charge still haven't caught up. White made her stance unmistakably clear. Leadership needs to evolve to match where the league truly is today. And make no mistake, everyone knew exactly who she meant. Without even naming names, it was obvious her words were aimed straight at Commissioner Cathy Engelbert. Because at this point, every single controversy, every messy headline, every frustrated player somehow ends up pointing back to the commissioner's office. White didn't have to say it outright. The message was loud enough for everyone to hear that, let's be real, Cathy Engelbert has been sitting squarely in the hot seat for months now. From brushing off player concerns to making tone-deaf remarks about Caitlin Clark's off-court earnings, she's managed to frustrate just about everyone: fans, players, and even coaches. So when Stephanie White says, "We need better leadership," that's her polite way of saying, it's time to get
your act together now. And honestly, she's not wrong. How many times have we seen the WNBA completely botch the simplest situations? From inconsistent officiating to poor communication and nonsensical fines, it's starting to feel like the people running the league have no idea how to handle success. The WNBA's growth isn't being driven by clever management or executive brilliance. It's being carried by the talent and charisma of the players themselves. White nailed it perfectly when she said, "Your employees are your number one asset." That statement cuts deep because it exposes what's really wrong at the top: a leadership team that's out of touch, out of rhythm, and dangerously close to losing the very players who made this league matter in the first place. And she's absolutely right. The players are the foundation of the WNBA, yet they're the ones who keep getting disrespected the most. Let's rewind for a second. Just a few weeks ago, Nafisa Collier went off on Cathy Engelbert, calling out her poor leadership and even revealing that Cathy once implied Caitlin Clark should simply be grateful for the WNBA platform. That comment alone exploded into a massive controversy. Instead of addressing it head-on, Cathy responded with a robotic, emotionless statement that only made things worse. Then came Sophie Cunningham, who didn't hold back, straight up calling Engelbert the most delusional leader our league has ever seen. Soon after, Lexi Hull publicly backed Becky Hammon, who subtly criticized the officiating and leadership as well. And now, even Stephanie White, one of the league's most measured and respected voices, has stepped in. If that doesn't show just how deep the frustration runs, nothing will. But let's bring it back to Caitlin Clark. Through all of this, she said almost nothing. When reporters asked her about Collier's remarks, her only response was calm and respectful. "I have great respect for Fee. She made a lot of valid points." That was it. No drama, no shade. Yet her name dominated headlines for weeks. Why? Because people can't seem to stop dragging her into every single issue the league faces. And that's exactly what Stephanie White despises. You can hear the emotion in her voice, the tone of someone who's genuinely protective. She isn't just defending Caitlin as her player, but as a young woman shouldering enormous pressure while trying to stay focused on the game she loves. Stephanie White deeply understands the overwhelming pressure that comes with being the face of an entire league, because she's lived through it in her own way. And here's the harsh truth. Caitlin Clark never asked for that role. The WNBA handed it to her the moment they saw the massive ratings spike and record-breaking attendance she brought in. Overnight, she became their so-called golden ticket. But now, whenever anything goes wrong, she's also become the league's most convenient scapegoat. And that's exactly what White is calling out. That White's message couldn't be clearer. Stop using Caitlin Clark as your shield. If players have issues with the CBA, address them directly.
If there's frustration with leadership, speak up about that. But stop turning every single league dispute into the Caitlin Clark conversation. Because frankly, it's exhausting and unfair. The sad part is, this cycle isn't ending anytime soon. Caitlin equals money. And as the saying goes, money always talks. But here's the twist no one saw coming. The more the league and media try to exploit her name, the more fans are beginning to turn on the WNBA itself. People are seeing straight through the manipulation now. They know when the league is using Caitlin's image to mask its own failures. Just think back to earlier this season, when referees allowed Caitlin to take brutal physical hits game after game, and the league said nothing. That silence spoke louder than any press release ever could. When public outrage finally exploded, that's when the league suddenly started releasing those so-called player safety statements. And that right there perfectly proves Stephanie White's point. The WNBA only reacts when the optics look bad, not when it's genuinely the right thing to do. This isn't just about missed calls or poor officiating. It's about basic respect, honest communication, and actually listening to the players who make the league possible. In the first place, White has been around this league long enough to recognize the difference between real leadership and empty corporate PR, and sadly, Kathy Engelbert falls almost entirely into the latter category. That's exactly why figures like Nafisa Collier and Stephanie White are finally speaking out. They've seen this same cycle before, a league full of potential undermined by leadership that refuses to evolve, and it never ends well. The WNBA is standing at a critical crossroads right now. For the first time ever, they have global momentum, massive attention, and true superstars who can shift the culture of sports. But what they don't have is time, because players' patience is running dangerously thin. And Stephanie White just had the courage to say what everyone else has been whispering. Fix the system before the players lose faith completely at what's easy to miss. Though, is that White didn't just criticize, she also defended the league in her own way, acknowledging that its growth and success are worth protecting. But only if leadership finally starts valuing the people who built it. Stephanie White smartly put it best when she said, "This current chaos is simply part of growing pains." And she's absolutely right. No sports league ever reached greatness without going through its share of internal turmoil. The NBA went through it. The NFL went through it. The key difference? Those leagues had leadership that actually learned from their mistakes and evolved. The real question now is, will the WNBA do the same? Because if it doesn't, the cracks we're seeing today could easily turn into deep fractures tomorrow. And here's the heartbreaking truth. While everyone's busy arguing, the fans are the ones losing. The constant drama, the endless finger-pointing, the leadership chaos, it's all overshadowing the beautiful game itself. The passion, the talent, the competition, everything that makes basketball great is getting buried under headlines and politics. Stephanie White understands that better than anyone. Her message wasn't about taking cheap shots or starting fights. It was about reminding everyone what's really at stake. The WNBA's credibility, its growth, its future, all of it depends on how the league treats its biggest stars. And right now, it's doing a terrible job. In the end, Stephanie White didn't just defend Caitlin Clark. She quietly exposed the entire system. She spoke with clarity, professionalism, and maturity, sounding like the only adult in a room full of chaos. And that's exactly why her words are resonating so deeply across the basketball world. When Stephanie White said, "We are part of the growing pains of becoming a mainstream league," it wasn't just a casual remark. It was a powerful reality check aimed at everyone. The players, the owners, and especially the front office. Because let's be honest, right now, the WNBA wants the fame and financial power of the NBA, yet still operates with the mindset of a small school athletic program. Think about it for a second. World-class athletes are still flying commercial, arguing over tiny salary scraps, and even getting fined for speaking the truth. Meanwhile, The executives in suits pat themselves on the back when ratings skyrocket, completely ignoring the fact that it's the players doing the real heavy lifting. Stephanie White knows this better than anyone. She's experienced both extremes, playing in the league's early survival years when it was barely staying afloat, and now coaching during its biggest growth era ever. She's not anti-league, she's anti-nonsense. And when she says Caitlin Clark is being used as a pawn, that's her diplomatic way of saying everyone's. Cashing in on her success while pretending they're not. The WNBA has created this strange double standard everyone claims to support women's basketball, but the second Caitlin Clark gets too much of the spotlight, they start to panic. They'll plaster her face across every commercial, splash her on every highlight reel, and mention her name every 5 seconds during broadcasts. But the moment she starts getting individual credit for driving the league's surge in popularity, the tone changes. Suddenly, it's too much Caitlin, and she's not the only one. That's the hypocrisy Stephanie White is calling out, a league that wants the benefits of superstardom without the humility to admit who's actually fueling it. Oh no, Caitlin Clark's getting too popular? She's overshadowing others? Please. That's exactly what happens when a once-in-a-generation athlete reshapes an entire sport. Michael Jordan did it. LeBron James did it. Serena Williams did it. And now, Caitlin Clark is doing it for women's basketball. Every major revolution in sports comes with the same trio: jealousy, fear, and power struggles behind the scenes. Stephanie White sees that crystal clear, and the brilliance is that she's smart enough to call it out without burning every bridge in the process. But here's the wild irony. The WNBA has no idea how to handle its own success. For years, they begged for mainstream attention, and now that they finally have it, they're squandering it with infighting, PR blunders, and tone-deaf leadership. Instead of celebrating the moment, they're busy arguing about who deserves the credit. And speaking of credit, the funniest and most frustrating part is watching Cathy Engelbert suddenly act like she's the mastermind behind the league's explosion. Let's be real, fans didn't start tuning in because of a new strategic growth
plan. They tuned in because Caitlin Clark made people actually care. Her games are the reason arenas are full, not because the commissioner held another dull press conference about sustainability. And when people point that out, Cathy slips into this strange victim mode. Oh, I'm disheartened by the criticism. Disheartened? Come on, you're not running a middle school. You're running a multi-million-dollar professional sports league. Start acting like it. That right there, that's the exact brand of fake leadership Stephanie White has been calling out. Hiding behind polished press releases, corporate meetings, and PR-approved statements isn't leadership. It's damage control disguised as authority. Real leadership means standing up for your players, loudly and unapologetically, when they're being dragged online or disrespected on the court. Stephanie White has done that time and time again. Cathy Engelbert, not even close. And here's the real twist: the people defending Cathy keep insisting she's a brilliant businesswoman. But being a businesswoman doesn't give you the right to ignore the basketball side of the business. Players like Kalia Copper, Sophie Cunningham, and even elite coaches like Becky Hammon are frustrated because they see what's happening. Decisions that make corporate sense, but zero basketball sense. The balance has tipped too far toward profit and PR, and you can feel the tension boiling over across the league. Everyone's reacting differently. Kalia sounds like she's campaigning for reform. Sophie, she's torching microphones with pure frustration. And Stephanie White, she doesn't yell, she doesn't rant. She drops calm, surgical truth bombs that hit harder than both combined. Because she's right, completely right. Caitlin Clark is being used by everyone. And now it's time to break down exactly how. The truth is painfully simple. Everyone's using Caitlin Clark, and Stephanie White wasn't afraid to spell it out. The league parades her around to impress sponsors and inflate growth numbers. The media milks her name for easy clicks and endless engagement. Players subtly use her popularity as bargaining power during negotiations. And even some fans weaponize her image to trash the WNBA whenever things go sideways. But here's the heartbreaking part. Caitlin herself, she just wants to play basketball. As Stephanie White perfectly put it, she's a 23-year-old athlete who lives for the game, not the circus around it. Yet the politics, narratives, and non-stop scrutiny have turned her every move into breaking news. If she smiles, she's fake. If she stays serious, she's arrogant. If she wins, it's rigged. If she loses, she's overrated. It's a lose-lose situation for someone who's simply trying to compete. And that's exactly why Stephanie White's defense matters. She wasn't just standing up for Caitlin Clark, she was defending the future of women's basketball itself. Because if the league keeps treating its brightest star like a marketing tool instead of a human being, it won't just lose Caitlin. It'll lose the trust, respect, and passion of the very fans who made this moment possible. So what do you think? Was Stephanie White right to call out the WNBA's leadership? Or is the league still blind to the storm it created?